What are some of the strangest superpowers show up in The Boys? One of the most unusual abilities comes from a hero known as Swatto, a member of Soldier Boy's team Payback. Unlike frontline fighters, Swatto has a pair of fly-like wings growing from his back, allowing him to hover and move rapidly through the air. His vision is just as strange. He has nearly 10,000 compound eyes, giving him near 360-degree awareness of everything around him. In theory, that makes him an ideal scout. But there's a major flaw. His wings constantly buzz at an extremely loud volume while he flies. Instead of staying hidden, he often ends up giving away his position just by moving. During one mission gone wrong, when he was ambushed, he panicked and took off into the air, only to be instantly taken out by a missile strike. Another odd power belongs to the Crimson Countess. She was originally the girlfriend of Soldier Boy, but after his capture, her status dropped significantly. Over time, she fell out of the spotlight and even had to rely on online streaming just to get by. Her ability allows her to absorb energy through physical touch and release it as a devastating blast. Anything she directly contacts can be destroyed almost instantly by this explosive force. However, there's a serious limitation. She must use both hands to charge the energy. If her hands are restrained, she becomes completely powerless, essentially no different from an ordinary person. Why is Web Weaver considered one of the most failed supes in The Boys? You probably wouldn't guess it at first. His webbing doesn't come from his hands. It's expelled from his lower body, and every time he uses it, it looks less like a heroic move and more like something deeply uncomfortable to watch. As strange as it seems, the material itself is incredibly strong, capable of supporting the weight of a full truck. On paper, that sounds impressive. In reality, though, the delivery ruins everything. Because of where it comes from, his movements always look awkward, almost unintentionally comedic. There's a constant sense of unease, something that neither he nor the audience can really ignore. His backstory doesn't help either. He grew up alone, with no real support system, until he was taken in by VOD International and placed into their soup program. But instead of enhancement, what he got was mutation. His body developed in ways it never should have. The webbing isn't a tool he uses, it's a part of him, and the way it manifests only makes things worse. At first, VOD tried to market him as a street-level hero, but it didn't take long to realize his abilities were nearly impossible to present in a way that felt natural, let alone appealing to the public. Over time, he was quietly pushed aside, forgotten in a system built on image. In the end, after turning against Homelander, his story was cut short, dealt with by Black Noir, as if he had never mattered at all. What are some of the strangest superpowers show up in The Boys? First is Splitter Man. He is a hardcore fan of Firecracker and often works with her to scam money from fans. Splitter Man's ability allows him to divide his own body at the cellular level, creating a large number of clones. These clones fully obey the original's commands. What makes it even more unusual is that the clones also have a degree of independent awareness. They can act on their own or coordinate with each other when needed. Damage or death of a clone does not affect the main body at all. However, the clones cannot move too far away from the original body, and any change to the main body is reflected across all copies. If the original dies, all clones die instantly as well. In terms of durability, Splitter Man is not especially strong compared to other supes. He is closer to an average human in physical resistance. In the end, he is taken down easily by Butcher with a single strike. Next is Mole Man. He was originally a writer at VOT, working on scripts and development. After AI replaced his job, VOT discarded him. Mole Man's ability is simple but bizarre. He can consume soil. He rapidly absorbs large amounts of dirt into his body, then expels it through his lower body. With this ability, he can dig a tunnel over 100 meters long in a very short time, creating a surprisingly wide passage. After completing this task, he disappears from the story entirely. Why can't Love Sausage control his body after a song plays? Would you believe the reason all traces back to a piece of music? In Season 3, he simply played a Russian song, but Soldier Boy happened to be nearby. That alone was enough to set things off. Soldier Boy got triggered and unleashed a massive energy blast, completely destroying the building around them. From that moment on, Love Sausage lost control over his ability. Things only got worse in Season 5. After refusing to swear loyalty to Homelander, he was sent to a soup detention camp. With his unusual powers, he often bullied other inmates in the camp, and even openly challenged Mother's Milk MM. Then one night, everything spiraled out of control. Butcher and his team broke into the camp, causing chaos everywhere. Taking advantage of the situation, Love Sausage decided to go after MM first. He used his unique ability in close combat against MM, but he couldn't win the fight. MM overpowered him and managed to fully restrain him. And just like that, his chaotic story came to an end. Looking back, he was honestly a pretty unlucky case. He originally went in seeking help for mental health issues, but VOT International stepped in and changed everything. Instead of his situation improving in a normal way, he ended up gaining superhuman abilities. So that raises the question, did he ever actually feel comfortable with the power he was given? What are some of the strangest superpowers shown in The Boys universe? First is Crimson Countess. She is a member of the Payback team and was formerly closely connected to Soldier Boy. Her ability allows her to generate energy through hand contact. By pressing her palms together, she can build up a destructive charge and release it as a powerful blast. The energy output is highly lethal, and anything caught in the direct impact zone is effectively obliterated. However, her power has a strict activation condition. Both hands must come into contact with each other to charge it. If her hands are restrained or separated, she cannot use her ability at all, making her vulnerable in close combat situations. After betraying Soldier Boy, she falls out of mainstream hero status and becomes a fringe suit, eventually relying on online streaming to make a living. In the end, Soldier Boy tracks her down, and she is killed by a powerful energy blast. Next is Gunpowder, another member of Payback. He is highly skilled with firearms and built his reputation around precision shooting and weapon expertise. In his early days, his attacks were so reckless that even teammates had to stay cautious around him. Over time, his skill evolves to an unusual level, allowing him to curve bullets and control their trajectory after firing, making his shots unpredictable and extremely difficult to evade. Despite this, he has no enhanced durability. Eventually, he is overpowered by Billy Butcher using temporary Compound V. What new abilities would the original V1 give Homelander? The moment he used it, the situation was already out of control. First, aging appears to be effectively paused, not slowed down, but brought almost to a complete standstill. If we look at known V1 users, their appearance has remained unchanged for decades. Their bodies seem locked at the moment they first used V1. Even after many years, there is no visible sign of aging. But that's only the beginning. Certain biological or experimental weapons that once managed to suppress him would likely become ineffective after V1 exposure. His resistance threshold seems to increase significantly. Then there is the change in regeneration. Injuries, deep tissue damage, even more severe trauma can recover in a very short time. It is somewhat similar to Stormfront's durability concept, but more stable and harder to predict in terms of upper limits. However, this is not without complications. If Compound 5 already exists in the body, introducing V1 may cause some form of interaction or mutation. The compounds could potentially merge or destabilize, leading to new and unpredictable ability expressions. In some cases, this could also produce negative effects rather than enhancements, so the outcome is not fully controlled. In theory, Homelander becomes significantly harder to kill and more resilient across multiple dimensions. So will Homelander become completely invincible? How can Butcher end up using two different versions of Compound V? Most versions of Compound V in The Boys come with serious risks and unpredictable results, and over time he ends up using two different versions of it. First, there is Temp V. He turns to it as a way to fight Homelander. Temp V gives Butcher similar powers, allowing him to keep up in combat, but the cost is severe. With repeated use, his body begins to break down, and he develops a tumor-like condition that continues to damage his health. Butcher later takes a modified version of Compound 5. Unlike Temp 5, it doesn't immediately trigger the same harsh side effects. Instead, it grants him a new ability, dark, tentacle-like extensions that emerge in battle. So why does this happen? It seems to amplify what already exists inside a person. In Butcher's case, those tentacle-like manifestations may be connected to abnormal internal growth. Over time, his condition shifts again. Instead of continuing to decline, his body begins to stabilize. He regains strength and even appears more capable than before, developing enhanced healing that lets him recover from injuries faster. This change may also be tied to the same underlying biological transformation. In the end, it feels less like coincidence and more like design. One version of Compound V brings illness, while another turns that same condition into power. It raises a bigger question: was this unintended, or part of a deeper experiment? Why couldn't Stormfront survive Ryan's heat vision? Homelander's heat vision could barely leave a mark on Stormfront. So why is Ryan, his son, so much more powerful? The key comes down to where their powers come from. Ryan's abilities are inherited directly from Homelander. He was born with them, not given them later. That makes a huge difference. In fact, his heat vision is shown to be even stronger than Homelander's in several scenes. We've seen hints of this before. When Butcher and Homelander teamed up, they could barely push Soldier Boy back. But Ryan, at only 10 years old, he knocked Soldier Boy down using just his heat vision. That alone says a lot. And in a more recent moment, Ryan's heat vision visibly burns Homelander's skin. Not just a scratch, actual damage. Compare that to Butcher. When he uses a similar ability, he only manages to burn through Homelander's suit, not his skin. So the difference in power is clear. Ryan's heat vision hits harder. It's more intense, more focused, and more destructive. Now look back at Stormfront. Yes, she also got her powers from Compound 5, but her durability was never on the same level as Soldier Boy's. She could take hits, but not like him, and at that point in the story, she wasn't at full strength either. So when Ryan unleashed his heat vision, the result wasn't surprising. It didn't just hurt her, it overwhelmed her completely. If Ryan keeps growing and learning to control his power, could he eventually surpass even Soldier Boy in raw attack strength? Can Soldier Boy strip Ryan of his superpowers? In The Boys, this ability has always been treated like a hard counter to Supes. Anyone whose abilities come from Compound V, once hit by Soldier Boy's blast, can lose their powers instantly. In many cases, their bodies are also severely damaged in the process. But Ryan is a special case. He's not a lab-made Supe. He's Homelander's biological son. In other words, his strength may not come directly from Compound V in the same way others are created, but instead from a more unstable mix of inherited traits and V-related biology. So the real question is, does Soldier Boy's power removal still work on him? To answer that, you have to understand what the ability actually does. In the show's lore, most Supes share a common vulnerability: radiation. And Soldier Boy's explosion is essentially a massive burst of destructive radiation energy. That's the core reason it can wipe out superhuman abilities in the first place. It doesn't just suppress powers temporarily, it seems to disrupt whatever biological structure is responsible for holding those abilities in place. So when it comes to Ryan, if his powers are still tied to any V-based genetic alteration, then Soldier Boy's blast could theoretically interfere with that structure and suppress or even remove his abilities. So what do you think? Why is Butcher the only one with two powers? Billy Butcher may not even be fully himself anymore. A lot of people assume he used Compound V just to get stronger, or maybe to survive. But the outcome feels different. He didn't gain a typical set of abilities. Instead, something inside him changed. Those black tendrils, they don't act like normal powers. They move on their own. When Butcher is pushed to the edge, they strike without warning. And when he comes to, the fight is already over. It's like something else is making decisions for him. That also reframes the moment when he visits his father. What if he was being driven there, not by emotion, but by whatever is growing inside him? That would also explain why Homelander looks genuinely shocked, because what he sees no longer feels human. Before, Butcher was still understandable. Now, even the source of his power is unclear, and that unpredictability is what makes it dangerous. But there's another possibility. Maybe Butcher isn't just releasing this force, maybe he can control it. If that's true, then that visit to his father might not have been about harm at all. It could have been something else, a transfer, or even a removal. Which raises a bigger question: what if his father isn't actually gone? That would mean Butcher is standing right between two paths, one where he loses himself completely and becomes something unrecognizable, and another where he takes control and turns this power into a weapon. And if that line keeps blurring, then maybe the biggest threat this season isn't Homelander, it might be Butcher himself. Why does the Stone Man lose control the moment he sees a volcanic eruption? Huey Campbell and his team are trying to find a weakness in Homelander. To do that, they often use the Stone Man for testing and experiments. But once they enter his home, the situation quickly gets out of control. On a TV in the background, there is a volcanic eruption. That image seems to trigger something inside him. Within seconds, his body reacts violently, releasing large amounts of extremely hot bodily fluid. Only then do they realize a key fact: the stone on his body is not real rock at all. It is hardened buildup of his own bodily fluids over time. A side effect formed when his powers completely went out of control. What makes it more tragic is how it all started. He never chose to receive this change. His mother was misled and allowed him to be exposed to an experimental compound which permanently changed his body. His muscles and skin hardened and distorted over time, eventually turning him into what people now call the Stone Man. In a sense, the stone on him can also be seen as something like a trace left behind by suffering, something that slowly built up over time. But the experiment does not stop there. To measure his reaction, his body immediately reacts in extreme ways. The stone-like structure begins to crack and collapse uncontrollably. Everything built up over years starts breaking down at once. So, what do you think? Is the Stone Man the most tragic character in The Boys? Why is the Deep actually going to be eliminated by Homelander? It's not Blackmore that decides his fate. The real issue is something much simpler. He is becoming useless. At first, the Deep tries everything to stay in Homelander's favor. He takes on public relations work arranged by Vought, but things quickly spiral out of control. A major oil pipeline incident leads to a severe environmental disaster. Massive marine pollution spreads, Vaught's corporate strategy takes a hit, and even Homelander's carefully built divine protector image starts to suffer. So how does Homelander see all of this? Very simply, through one filter: usefulness. In his worldview, people are either assets or liabilities. If someone strengthens his image, supports his control, or reinforces his authority, they are kept close. But the moment they become a burden, they stop being protected. So where does the Deep stand now? His core ability is communication with marine life. That used to be his defining trait. But after the environmental disaster, with large-scale marine death and ecosystem collapse, that ability loses most of its relevance. His only marketable skill is effectively undermined. And more importantly, this isn't an isolated pattern. Homelander has done this before. When a Supe stops serving a purpose purpose, removal is often quick and quiet. So the real question becomes, in Homelander's system, can the Deep actually recover his usefulness, or is he already past the point of return? He is essentially a stand-in actor rather than a naturally born sup, and there is no clear confirmation that he possesses the same level of superhuman durability. On top of that, he suffers from severe narcolepsy, which causes him to suddenly fall asleep during critical moments in combat. This drastically reduces his reaction speed and consistency in fights. Meanwhile, the Deep is familiar with Black Noir's limitations. In that encounter, he immediately targeted those weaknesses and ended the fight quickly. So while Black Noir's death may seem abrupt, it fits his overall role in the story. He was never treated as irreplaceable. As a replacement asset, once he is gone, Bot can simply deploy another version. That is also why the Deep was willing to take the